The black SUV rolled slowly through the streets of Riverside, passing small businesses and familiar neighborhoods. Inside, Michael Big Shaq Thompson stayed out the window, feeling strange. 15 years had passed since he'd left this town, trading its quiet streets for the roaring stadiums and bright lights of professional basketball. "You sure you want to stop by the school first, boss?" asked his driver. "The charity event doesn't start for another 3 hours." Big Shaq nodded. "Yeah, just feeling a bit nostalgic today." Truth was, he hadn't planned on visiting Riverside High. He was only in town for a quick appearance at a youth basketball fundraiser. Sign some autographs, take some photos, give a speech about chasing dreams. The usual celebrity stuff. But something had tugged at him as they drove past the familiar streets of his childhood. "Pull over here," he said as they approached the school. The building looked smaller than he remembered. The red brick walls were weathered, the front steps cracked in places, but the big blue and gold sign still proudly announced home of the Riverside Ravens, the team he had once led to 3 state championships. Big Shaq stood on the sidewalk, hands in the pockets of his designer jeans, just looking at the place. It was a Tuesday afternoon in May. School was still in session for another few weeks. He could hear the distant sound of voices and activity from inside. "You going in?" the driver asked. Big Shaq hesitated. "Yeah, just for a few minutes." He pushed open the heavy front doors, half expecting someone to stop him. But the small reception area was empty except for a young woman typing at a computer behind a desk. "Can I help?" she began, then stopped, her eyes widening. "Oh my God, you're Big Shaq." He smiled politely. "Just visiting. Is it okay if I look around for a bit?" "Of course. Do you want me to call Principal Wilson? He'd love to meet you." "No need to bother him. I just want to see a few places for old time's sake." The woman nodded eagerly. "Go right ahead. Most classes are in session, but the gym is empty this period if you want to check it out." Big Shaq thanked her and walked down the main hallway. The place smelled exactly the same, that mix of floor cleaner, cafeteria food, and teenage sweat that was somehow the same in every high school across America. The trophy cases had been updated, he noticed. His team's championship trophies were now pushed to the back, making room for newer victories. He turned left, heading toward the gymnasium. This was where it had all started for him, where Coach Taylor had first spotted his raw talent and taught him the discipline he'd needed to make it, where he'd practiced jump shots for hours after everyone else had gone home, where college scouts had first come to watch the skinny kid with the amazing vertical leap. The gym door was propped open. Big Shaq paused at the entrance, taking in the familiar space. The wooden floor gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Championship banners hung from the rafters, 3 of them with his years on them. Something caught his eye. A faded photo on the wall of fame near the entrance. He walked over to look at it. His senior year team, all gangly teenage boys with big smiles and bright futures. His younger self stood in the center, holding the state championship trophy, looking so eager and unaware of the journey ahead. Big Shaq chuckled at his old haircut, at how young they all looked. His eyes moved across the familiar faces, then stopped on something in the background. There, partly visible behind the team, was an older man in a janitor's uniform, smiling proudly as he watched from the sidelines. "Mr. Jenkins," Big Shaq murmured, surprised he remembered the name. He wandered further into the hallways, memories flooding back with each step. The cafeteria where he'd sat with his friends. The classroom where he'd struggled with algebra. The principal's office where he'd been sent more than once for pranks and talking back. As he turned a corner, he stopped suddenly. There, at the end of the hallway, was an elderly man slowly pushing a mop across the floor. His back was bent with age, his movements careful and deliberate. But there was something familiar about him. Big Shaq walked closer, his expensive sneakers squeaking on the freshly mopped floor. The old man looked up. In that moment, years melted away. Big Shaq wasn't a famous millionaire athlete anymore. He was just Michael, a kid from Riverside, standing face to face with the school janitor who had always greeted him with a kind word and a smile. "Mr. Jenkins," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is that really you?" Big Shaq stood there for a moment, watching the old man work. Mr. Jenkins moved slowly but with purpose, his wrinkled hands gripping the mop handle with familiar ease. There was something both heartbreaking and inspiring about seeing him still here after all these years. "Mr. Jenkins," Big Shaq called out, his deep voice echoing slightly in the empty hallway. The old janitor turned around, squinting through thick glasses. He didn't recognize the tall, well-dressed man standing before him. Years had passed, and the skinny teenager he once knew had grown into an imposing figure. "It's me, sir, Michael Thompson. You used to call me Too Tall back in the day." Mr. Jenkins froze, his eyes widening as recognition slowly dawned on his weathered face. The mop handle slipped from his grasp and clattered to the floor. His mouth opened, then closed, then broke into a wide, toothless grin that lit up his entire face. "Well, I'll be Lil Mikey Thompson, though ain't nothing little about you now," he chuckled, extending a trembling hand which Big Shaq ignored, pulling the old man into a gentle hug instead. "What you doing back here, son? Last I heard, you was living large in them fancy mansions with your championship rings." Big Shaq smiled. "Just visiting for a charity thing. Thought I'd swing by and see the old court. Never expected to find you still working the halls, Mr. J." The janitor bent down with effort to retrieve his mop. Big Shaq quickly stepped in to help him, noticing how Mr. Jenkins winced as he straightened up again. "You still at it after all these years? You gotta be what now, 80? "Turned 80 last month," Mr. Jenkins nodded proudly. "Been here 47 years now. Started when your mama was still a student here herself." Big Shaq shook his head in amazement. "But why, Mr. J? You should be relaxing, enjoying retirement." Something changed in the old man's expression. A flicker of worry crossed his face before he tried to hide it behind another smile. "Can't afford to stop just yet, son. Times is tough." They walked together down the hall as Mr. Jenkins continued his work, moving at a pace that spoke of both determination and physical struggle. Big Shaq slowed his own steps to match. "My Ellie, she got the cancer bad 3 years back," Mr. Jenkins explained, his voice dropping lower. "Insurance only covers so much. My pension ain't enough for them special treatments she needs." Big Shaq felt a knot form in his stomach. Here was the man who had once found him crying in an empty classroom after he'd failed a big test, the man who had sat with him for hours after school going over notes, the man who'd snuck him sandwiches when he knew Big Shaq's family was going through hard times. "How is Miss Ellie doing?" he asked softly. "Fighting like a warrior," Mr. Jenkins said, pride evident in his voice. "Been married 55 years next month. Told her I'd take her to that fancy restaurant downtown for our anniversary, but..." He trailed off, looking at his worn uniform. As they talked, Big Shaq noticed how the old janitor greeted every passing student by name, offering kind words and gentle encouragement. Some barely acknowledged him, rushing past with their eyes glued to phones. Others stopped to chat briefly, clearly fond of the elderly man. "You know," Mr. Jenkins said, pointing to a row of lockers, "your old locker was right there. Number 23. You was so superstitious about that number." Big Shaq laughed. "Still am. Still wear it on my jersey." "I know," the old man said with a wink. "I watch every game. Got a little TV in my cleaning closet. Principal don't mind if I catch a quarter during my lunch break." Something about this hit Big Shaq hard. The thought of Mr. Jenkins at 80 years old, hunched over a tiny TV in a janitor's closet, cheering him on while eating a cold sandwich, all while working a job he should have left behind years ago. "Mr. J, why don't we grab coffee after you finish up today? I'd love to catch up properly." The old man's eyes brightened. "That'd be something special. I get off at 4. As they set plans to meet later, Big Shaq's mind was already racing with ideas. Mr. Jenkins had been there for him during his darkest moments as a teenager. Now it was his turn to step up. The small coffee shop 2 blocks from the high school wasn't fancy. Its worn leather booths had seen better days, and the menu hadn't changed in 20 years. But to Mr. Jenkins, it was special. He'd been coming here every Friday afternoon since 1986. Big Shaq arrived early, choosing a corner booth away from the windows. He didn't need fans spotting him today. This moment wasn't about him. The bell above the door jingled, and in walked Mr. Jenkins. He changed out of his work uniform into a clean button-up shirt that hung loosely on his thin frame. The old man glanced around nervously until he spotted Big Shaq. "Wasn't sure you'd really come," Mr. Jenkins admitted as he slid into the booth. Figured a big star like you might have better things to do. No way I'd miss this, Big Shaq replied. You know, back then, you were one of the few people who actually believed in me. The waitress recognized Mr. Jenkins immediately, greeting him by name and bringing his usual order without asking, black coffee with 1 sugar and a slice of apple pie. Big Shaq ordered the same. Got something to show you, Mr. Jenkins said, reaching into a worn leather bag. He pulled out what looked like an old photo album, its corners frayed and cover faded. Been keeping this for years. The wife says I'm silly for it, but I couldn't help myself. He opened the album carefully, like he was handling something precious. Inside were newspaper clippings, photos, and handwritten notes, all meticulously arranged and dated. This here's my pride collection, he explained. Every kid who ever passed through those halls that I thought needed a little extra watching over. Big Shaq leaned forward, amazed at the detail. There were hundreds of entries spanning decades, faded photos from the 70s all the way to recent digital printouts. Each had notes in Mr. Jenkins' neat handwriting. Wait, that's Lisa Chen, Big Shaq said, pointing to a photo. She's a heart surgeon now, right? Mr. Jenkins nodded, beaming. Top of her class at medical school. Her folks worked 3 jobs between them. I'd find her sleeping in the library some mornings. Made sure she always had breakfast. He turned a page, and that's Jimmy Brooks. His daddy was in jail, mama was gone. Boy had a temper that wouldn't quit. Now he runs that youth center downtown. Page after page revealed similar stories, kids who'd faced tough odds but somehow made it through. Troubled teens, poor kids, brilliant ones who just needed someone to notice them. Mr. Jenkins had watched over them all. Then Big Shaq saw himself. A skinny 15-year-old with a too big jersey and a nervous smile on his first day of tryouts. Next to it was a ticket stub from his very first high school game. You kept this? He asked, voice catching. Course I did. Knew you was special from day one. There were more clippings as the pages turned, newspaper articles about Big Shaq's high school championships, his college recruitment, draft day. But mixed in were other things. A detention slip from when he'd nearly been kicked off the team for fighting, a failing grade on a math test, and a note from a teacher recommending he focus less on basketball and more on studies. Remember this day? Mr. Jenkins pointed to a particular date. Big Shaq stared at it, then nodded slowly. Sophomore year. When coach benched me for missing practice. I was ready to quit. Found you in the gym at midnight, shooting free throws and crying mad. Told you champions ain't made when things go easy. I remember what you said exactly, Big Shaq said quietly. The janitor sees everything, son. I've been watching you. You got something special, but talent ain't enough. You got have heart. Mr. Jenkins smiled, his eyes crinkling. Next day you was there an hour before practice. Every day after that too. Big Shaq was quiet for a moment, looking at these fragments of his past life, preserved by this man who had no obligation to care but did anyway. How many kids you got in this book, Mr. J? The old man shrugged, lost count around 300. Some turned out great, like you. Some didn't. But I tried to see them all. And the school never knew about all this. Ain't nobody pay much mind to what the janitor does, he said without bitterness. Just how it is. But that's all right, wasn't doing it for credit. Big Shaq looked at the elderly man across from him with new eyes. All those years, while everyone else saw just a janitor pushing him up, Mr. Jenkins had been quietly changing lives. Big Shaq couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those pages in Mr. Jenkins' album. All those kids, all those lives. And somehow his own story woven among them. At 5 a.m., he gave up trying to sleep and made some calls. By noon, he had phone numbers for 15 people from the album. He started with Dr. Lisa Chen, now running a cardiac unit in Boston. Mr. Jenkins, from Riverside High? Her voice lit up instantly. How did you get my number? Is he okay? When Big Shaq explained who he was, there was a pause, then laughter. Wait, you're the Big Shaq, the basketball player? And you're calling about Mr. Jenkins? Yes, ma'am. I'm trying to find out more about how he helped people. I saw your photo in his album. His album? He kept an album? Her voice softened. That sounds just like him. Look, I've got surgery in 20 minutes, but here's the short version. My parents had just come to America. They barely spoke English. They cleaned office buildings at night, so I was alone a lot. I used to hide in the library after hours to do homework because our apartment was freezing in winter. She paused, and Big Shaq could hear the emotion in her voice. Mr. Jenkins found me there one night. Instead of kicking me out, he brought me a sandwich and turned up the heat. After that, he'd leave the library unlocked just for me. Sometimes there'd be food waiting. When I got accepted to med school but couldn't afford the deposit, an envelope appeared in my locker with exactly the amount I needed. No name, but I knew. Next, Big Shaq called Tom Wilson, now a high school principal himself in a neighboring district. Mr. Jenkins saved my life, no exaggeration, Tom said bluntly. My dad was an alcoholic, used to beat us pretty bad. Mr. Jenkins noticed the bruises. He got me help, found me places to stay when home wasn't safe. 20 years later, I still send him a card every Christmas. By evening, Big Shaq had spoken with a lawyer, a police officer, 2 teachers, a plumber, and even another professional athlete, a baseball player named Rodriguez who'd made it to the major leagues. The pattern was always the same. Mr. Jenkins had spotted a kid in trouble. Maybe they were hungry. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they just needed someone to believe in them. And somehow, this quiet janitor had stepped in, never seeking credit or thanks. "Did you know the school is trying to make him retire?" said Mrs. Patel, now the head librarian at Riverside. "The new principal thinks he's too old, says he's a liability." They've been cutting his hours, hoping he'll take the hint. Big Shaq felt his stomach twist, but his wife needs the health insurance. Exactly. That's why he won't leave, even though his arthritis is so bad some days he can barely hold them up. Last winter he fell on the ice in the parking lot, cracked 2 ribs but came to work the next day. The more people Big Shaq called, the angrier and more determined he felt. How could someone who had done so much for others be struggling so hard himself? He drove back to the school late that afternoon, parking his expensive car among the teachers' modest vehicles. The basketball team was practicing in the gym. Through the window, he watched them run drills, remembering when that had been him. In the hallway outside, he spotted Mr. Jenkins slowly pushing his cleaning cart, stopping now and then to lean against the wall when he thought nobody was looking. The pain was visible on his face. Big Shaq watched as a group of teenage boys passed by, laughing and shoving each other. One knocked into Mr. Jenkins, spilling his cleaning supplies. The boys didn't even look back. A girl stopped to help him pick up the scattered supplies, and Big Shaq saw Mr. Jenkins smile at her, asking about her day as if nothing had happened. As if he wasn't an 80-year-old man in pain, working when he should be retired, being disrespected by kids who had no idea what he'd done for generations of students before them. In that moment, Big Shaq made up his mind. This wasn't right. Mr. Jenkins had spent his life helping others from the shadows. It was time someone stepped into the light for him. He pulled out his phone and called his financial advisor. "Hey, it's me. I need to set up a fund, and I need to make some changes to a school. How quickly can you get a team together?" Big Shaq sat in his hotel room, surrounded by papers, his laptop open, and 3 phones lined up on the desk. He hadn't slept much in 3 days, but he didn't care. This was important. More important than any championship game he'd ever played. "No, that's not fast enough," he said into one of the phones. "I need the paperwork done by tomorrow, not next week." His financial advisor sighed on the other end. "Michael, these things take time. We're talking about setting up a substantial trust fund. There are legal requirements." "Then get more lawyers," Big Shaq cut in. "Pay them whatever they want. Just get it done." He hung up and immediately dialed another number. This time, it was his old teammate Joey, who'd gone into real estate after retiring from basketball. "Hey man," Joey answered. "How's the hometown treating you?" "I need your help with something," Big Shaq said, skipping the small talk. "You still know people in construction?" "Sure do. What's up?" "I want to renovate part of Riverside High. There's an old storage wing that nobody uses anymore. I want to turn it into something special." By noon, Big Shaq had a team of lawyers working on the Jenkins Care Fund designed specifically to cover all medical expenses for Ellie Jenkins' cancer treatment. He had real estate experts assessing the unused wing of the school, and he had arranged a meeting with the school board for the following day. But money and renovations weren't enough. Mr. Jenkins needed purpose, not just financial security. The old man had spent his life helping kids. Taking that away would break him. Big Shaq walked the empty hallways of the school after hours, trying to imagine how to make this work. He stopped at the unused wing, pushing open the heavy doors. Dust motes floated in the air, dancing in the beams of afternoon sunlight that streamed through dirty windows. All desks were piled against walls, broken chairs stacked in corners. "What are you doing in here?" a voice asked from behind him. Big Shaq turned to find Mr. Jenkins standing there, leaning heavily on his mop. "Just looking around," Big Shaq said, thinking fast, remembering old times. Mr. Jenkins smiled. "Nobody comes in here anymore. Budget cuts. They can't afford to fix it up, so they just closed it off." Big Shaq looked around with new eyes. "What if someone did fix it up? What would you do with this space?" The old janitor leaned his mop against the wall and looked thoughtful. "Well now," he said slowly, "if it was up to me, I'd make it a place for kids to go after school. Somewhere safe. Somewhere they could get help with homework or just talk if they needed to." His eyes lit up as he warmed to the idea. Could have some computers, some books, maybe a little kitchen to make snacks. Nothing fancy, just a place to belong. Big Shaq nodded, making mental notes. "You think the school would want something like that?" "Oh sure," Mr. Jenkins said. "A lot of kids here don't have anywhere to go after the bell rings. Parents working late, no money for activities. They just wander the streets, getting into trouble." The next day, Big Shaq showed up at the school board meeting in a suit, flanked by his lawyer and financial advisor. The board members were starstruck at first, asking for autographs and selfies, but their smiles faded as Big Shaq laid out his plan. "I want to establish the Jenkins Mentorship Center," he explained, showing them the architectural renderings Joey's team had worked up overnight. "A place where students can go for guidance, help with schoolwork, or just a safe space." The board chairman cleared his throat. "That's very generous, Mr. Thompson, but who would run this center?" "Mr. Jenkins would," Big Shaq said firmly, "with a proper salary, benefits, and a pension plan that I'll fund personally." The chairman exchanged glances with the other board members. "Mr. Jenkins is, well, he's our janitor, and he's 80 years old." "Exactly," Big Shaq nodded. "He's been watching over the kids in this school for almost 50 years. Nobody knows them better. Nobody cares more." He leaned forward. "And he's been doing it while pushing them up, because that's the only job you gave him. Imagine what he could do if you gave him a real chance to help." The room fell silent. Big Shaq placed a folder on the table. "In here are letters from former students. A doctor, a police officer, a teacher, a principal. People whose lives Mr. Jenkins changed when they were kids. Read them, then tell me he's just a janitor." Word got out fast. In a small town like Riverside, news travels quicker than wildfire in July. By the end of the week, everyone knew that basketball superstar Big Shaq was planning something big at the high school for old Mr. Jenkins. What started as Big Shaq's personal mission quickly took on a life of its own. His phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from former students wanting to help. "I own a furniture store now," said one caller. "I want to donate desks and chairs for the center." "My company does computer works," said another. "We've got 20 laptops we were going to replace. They're still good. The kids can have them." The local hardware store offered paint. A construction company volunteered labor on weekends. The town's small newspaper ran a front-page story. NBA star remembers his roots and the man who helped him grow. Big Shaq hadn't planned on any of this attention. He just wanted to help one good man who'd spent his life helping others. Now suddenly, he was in charge of what felt like a small army. "I don't understand," Mr. Jenkins said when Big Shaq finally told him what was happening. They were sitting in the old man's modest living room. The walls were covered with photographs, mostly of kids from the school over the years, but also of his wife Ellie, who was resting in the bedroom. "Why would all these folks want to help me? I'm nobody special." "That's where you're wrong," Big Shaq said gently. "Every single person who's called me has a story about you. How you noticed when they were hungry or scared or lonely. How you slipped them a few dollars when they needed it, or listened when nobody else would. You thought nobody was paying attention to an old janitor, but everybody was watching you. Mr. J, you showed them what it means to be a good person. Tears welled up in the old man's eyes, but he blinked them away quickly. Just did what anybody would do. No, Big Shaq shook his head firmly. Not everybody, that's the point. On Saturday morning, Big Shaq arrived at the school to find over 50 people already there, ready to work. Some he recognized from Mr. Jenkins' album. Others were current students or parents, or just folks from town who wanted to be part of something good. Where do we start? Asked a burly plumber with a toolbox. Cleaning first, Big Shaq said, handing out masks and gloves. Then painting. The construction guys will handle the walls we need to take down or put up. All day they worked, side by side, the NBA star and the teacher, the lawyer and the grocery store clerk. They cleaned out years of dust and junk. They painted walls in bright, cheerful colors. They installed new lights and fixed broken windows. A local TV station showed up, drawn by rumors of Big Shaq's presence. The reporter looked confused. So you're renovating part of your old school? Is this some kind of publicity thing? Big Shaq, covered in paint and dust, just smiled. This isn't about me. This is about Mr. Jenkins. Talk to these people. They'll tell you why they're here. The reporter went from person to person, collecting stories. The teacher who'd been a troubled teen until Mr. Jenkins convinced her she was smart enough for college. The business owner who'd been homeless his senior year until Mr. Jenkins arranged for him to stay with a kind family. The nurse whose mother had died young, leaving her to raise her siblings. Mr. Jenkins had brought groceries every Friday for a year. By the end of the day, the reporter was helping paint walls. Social media exploded with the story. #ThankYouJenkins started trending locally, then nationally. People from all over began sharing stories of the unsung heroes in their own schools, the lunch ladies who made sure kids never went hungry, the bus drivers who bought winter coats for children who didn't have them, the secretaries who quietly paid for field trips for students who couldn't afford to go. What had begun as one man's gesture of gratitude had sparked something much bigger. People were remembering that heroes don't always wear capes or play in the NBA. Sometimes they push mops down school hallways for 50 years, changing lives one small kindness at a time. When Mr. Jenkins was finally brought to see the half-completed center the following week, the normally composed old man stood in the doorway, looking at his name painted in big, bright letters over the entrance. The Jenkins Mentorship Center, he read slowly, his voice breaking. You did all this for me? No, Mr. J, Big Shaq said quietly. We did this because of you. 6 months later, Big Shaq's private jet touched down at the small regional airport near Riverside. He hadn't planned to come back so soon, but he wouldn't have missed this day for anything, not even the playoff games happening next week. The Jenkins Mentorship Center was now fully operational, a bright spot in the otherwise aging high school building. The unused wing had been transformed into a welcoming space with comfortable furniture, computers, books, and even a small kitchen. Large windows let in natural light, and student artwork covered the walls. As Big Shaq walked through the main entrance of the school, he noticed things were different. Trophy cases had been polished. The floors gleamed, and there was a new display near the front office, a large glass case containing Mr. Jenkins' album, open for everyone to see the lives he had touched over 5 decades. He made his way to the mentorship center and paused in the doorway, taking in the scene. About 20 students were scattered around the room. Some worked on homework. Others chatted quietly in small groups. A few were gathered around a table where Mr. Jenkins sat, no longer in his janitor's uniform, but wearing slacks and a button-up shirt, helping a young boy with math problems. You just have to take it step by step, Mr. Jenkins was saying. Just like anything hard in life, don't look at the whole problem at once. Break it down. The boy nodded, his forehead wrinkled in concentration as he tried again. When he got the answer right, Mr. Jenkins' face lit up with such genuine pride that Big Shaq felt a lump form in his throat. Mr. Jenkins spotted him then and waved him over. The students looked up, eyes widening as they recognized the famous basketball player. Kids, you'll remember I told you about Michael? The one who helped make this place happen, Mr. Jenkins said. The students nodded, suddenly shy in the presence of celebrity. How's it going, Mr. J? Big Shaq asked, sitting down at the table. Better than I ever dreamed, the old man said, his eyes clear and bright. "These young folks keep me on my toes." He lowered his voice. "And Ellie's doing much better with those new treatments. Doctor says she might even go into remission." A girl with braces and colorful beads in her hair worked up the courage to speak. "Mr. Jenkins helped me get my grades up. I was failing 3 classes before. Now I'm passing everything." "He helped me too," said a tall, skinny boy who reminded Big Shaq of himself at that age. "My mom lost her job, and we couldn't pay rent. Mr. Jenkins found us a place to stay until she got back on her feet." Big Shaq wasn't surprised. Even with a new title and a comfortable office, Mr. Jenkins was still doing what he'd always done, seeing the kids who needed help the most. Later that evening, the school held its annual awards ceremony. The gym was packed with students, parents, and community members. Big Shaq sat in the front row next to Ellie Jenkins, who was having a good day and had insisted on coming despite her husband's worries. When the principal took the stage, she had a surprise announcement. "Tonight, we're introducing a new award," she said, "the Jenkins Impact Award, to be given each year to someone who makes a profound difference in our community without seeking the spotlight." A murmur ran through the crowd as Mr. Jenkins was called to the stage. "I can't think of anyone more deserving to be our first recipient," the principal continued, "than the man for whom this award is named." The audience rose to their feet, applauding as Mr. Jenkins slowly made his way up to the stage. He looked overwhelmed by the standing ovation, his eyes searching the crowd until they found his wife and Big Shaq. "I don't know what to say," he began, his voice shaky. "I'm just an old man who pushed a mutt for most of his life." "You're a lot more than that," someone called from the audience. Mr. Jenkins smiled, gaining confidence. "All I ever wanted was to help kids who needed it. I never had children of my own, but I had thousands of them come through those school doors, and each one mattered to me." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces, some he'd known for decades, others brand new, all watching him with respect and love. "You don't need money or power to make a difference," he said simply. "You just need to see people, really see them, and then do whatever small thing you can to help. That's all I ever did." Big Shaq felt tears on his cheeks and didn't bother to wipe them away. From NBA championships to million-dollar endorsements, nothing in his life had ever felt as important as this moment.